Welcome to this explainer. Alright, so we're diving straight into 411 BC Athens today. We're looking at a truly wild comedy by the one and only Aristophanes called The Women Celebrating the Thesmophoria, or if you want to flex your Greek, the Thesmophoriazusae. Now you probably know this was actually produced the exact same year as his super famous play Lysistrata, but this one, it's a completely different beast. Aristophanes totally drops his usual sharp anti-war and anti-populist stuff here. Instead, he goes all in on gender dynamics and absolutely roasts contemporary tragic poets. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this. What happens when Athens' most famous tragic poet realizes the women of the city are literally using a top-secret fertility festival to plot his murder? I mean, that's an insane hook, right? The whole thing goes down at the Thesmophoria. This was a very real, strictly women-only annual festival for the goddess Demeter. No men allowed, period. That means the women have this totally private, secure space, and inside that bubble, a rumor starts flying around that they're using this gathering to organize, plot, and ultimately execute the city's top playwright.
And who's the target of this assassination plot? None other than the real-life tragedian Euripides. And guys, Euripides is absolutely terrified. He's freaking out because he caught wind that the women of Athens are furious with his plays. They are absolutely convinced that he's constantly portraying them as mad, murderous, and totally sexually depraved. Because of these perceived insults, Euripides is dead certain they're going to pass a literal death sentence on him at the festival. He knows he desperately needs someone on the inside to defend him, but again, it's a women-only event, so he has to get a little creative.
And honestly, the lengths this guy goes to for his undercover spy mission are just hilarious. First, he begs this fellow tragedian, Agathon, who's known for being quite effeminate, to go in disguise, but Agathon is like, no way. He refuses point blank because he's actually scared the women will be jealous of him. So, plan B. Euripides turns to his elderly father-in-law, Nicelachus, who actually steps up and volunteers. Euripides personally shaves him, depilates him, and completely dolls him up in borrowed women's clothes. We're talking a saffron-colored robe, a hairnet, the whole shebang. Fully disguised, Nicelachus actually manages to sneak into the secret rites. But yeah, as you might have guessed, Nicelachus is not exactly James Bond. Once he's inside, the women form an assembly to vote on Euripides' punishment. Nicelachus stands up, supposedly to defend his son-in-law. But instead of, reading the room and calming things down, he completely blows it. He actually argues that women shouldn't be mad at Euripides because their real-life behavior is way worse than anything he writes. He literally starts dropping scandalous stories about cheating wives and their secret mischief. Obviously, this is a huge red flag. The women realize there's an imposter among them. They physically examine the old man, and boom, they discover his true sex. The jig is officially up. Now, on the surface, this infiltration is just pure slapstick physical comedy. But Aristophanes is actually pulling a brilliant Trojan horse trap on his audience here. See, the women at the festival haven't just formed some chaotic, angry mob. No, they've actually set up a highly sophisticated, exact replica of the Athenian Democratic Assembly, mirroring the male-run paniques. A herald calls for silence and prayer. They use strict parliamentary procedure, literally asking who asked to speak before anyone talks. They have a functioning Senate of the women, and they're passing official decrees. This is absolutely crucial because it illustrates the core subversion of the whole play. Women are exercising a level of organized, official political power that they were 100% excluded from in actual Athenian society.
But okay, before we get too bogged down in political theory, Aristophanes whips us right back into the farce. Nicelachus is busted. He's surrounded by these furious women who have systematically hunted him down. Panicking, he makes a run to the altar for sanctuary. And then, in this totally desperate, wild move to save his own skin, he grabs what he thinks is a woman's baby right out of her arms. He threatens to kill the kid if they don't back off. It's this incredibly tense, high-stakes, hostage situation.
Or, so it seems anyway. In just this classic, quintessential bit of Aristophanic double-take humor, the old man looks a little closer at his hostage and realizes, wait a minute, this isn't a baby at all. It's a wineskin. It's literally a bag of wine, completely dressed up in baby clothes and little booties that one of the women smuggled into the festival. The play treats this utterly absurd moment completely straight, which just makes it funnier. It's this brilliant visual gag that instantly diffuses the tension while also poking fun at the stereotype of women loving a secret drink.
So, with Nicelachus now captured, chained to a post and guarded by a Scythian police officer, it's all on Euripides to mount a rescue. And the entire second half of this play is basically Euripides trying these increasingly ridiculous rescue missions, every single one of them parodying his own famous tragedies. It's incredibly meta. First, he swoops in pretending to be Menelaus from his play Helen, trying to cast this bearded old man as the beautiful Helen of Troy. When that flops, he tries playing Perseus, treating Menesilochus like a chained-up damsel in distress. Finally, Euripides realizes high art just isn't going to cut it here. He finally succeeds by dressing up as an old woman and bringing along a beautiful dancing girl. The dancer totally distracts the guard, and Menesilochus manages to just slip away.
So you gotta ask yourself, why all this absurdity? I mean, Aristophanes wasn't just throwing together a slapstick comedy for the sake of it. Beneath all the cross-dressing, the wine-skinned babies, and the wild theatrical parodies, there's this really profound layer of political subversion and social commentary going on. He sets up this incredibly direct, striking contrast between the men and the women. Keep in mind, the year is 411 BC. Athens has just suffered a catastrophic military defeat in the Sicilian expedition. So the female chorus actually steps forward and makes a direct, hard-hitting political argument. They claim they are way better stewards of the city's heritage than the men are. They point out that they've perfectly preserved their domestic symbols, their weaving shuttles, their wool baskets, their parasols. To them, these represent stability. The men, well, they've completely failed the state. They've literally thrown away their spears and shields running from a disastrous war. And the chorus doesn't stop at military failure either. They go straight after male morality too. They lay out this brilliant comparison regarding corruption. They point to massive male corruption, openly accusing the men of embezzling 50 talents from the state coffers, which is a massive fortune, by the way. And in contrast, they're like, what's the absolute worst crime a woman commits? Maybe taking a tiny scoop of corn from her husband's cellar, which she usually replaces the very next day anyway. The women argue that honor should actually go to the mothers who produce useful citizens for the state, while the mothers of cowards should be publicly shamed. This whole dynamic sets up a fascinating clash between collective action and individual cowardice. Look at the women throughout the play. They demonstrate this highly disciplined, organized capacity for security. When they suspect a spy, they don't panic, they systematically and boldly search the area. Now compare that to the men. The male leadership in Athens is totally fractured by war and greed. In the play, the men are reduced to desperate deception. They're hiding in effeminate disguises and literally fleeing to altars for their lives. The women have maintained a tight, functional social order, while the men's order is just completely falling apart.
Ultimately, what Aristophanes pulls off here is a total subversion of ancient sexual stereotypes. The men, who normally hold literally all the power in Athenian society, are forced into absolute submission. Euripides, this great, intellectual, famous poet, has to bow down to the women's organized resistance. To finally get his father-in-law released, Euripides actually has to strike a peace deal. He formally promises the women that he will never, ever speak ill of them in any of his future plays. The women win. They completely outmaneuver the men at every single turn.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. How does a comedy written over 2.5 millennia ago manage to challenge traditional gender stereotypes in ways that still feel incredibly relevant today? Aristophanes basically used the Trojan horse of a hilarious, farcical plot to force his audience to question the competence of male leadership and to showcase the fierce, untapped organizational power of women. It's a great reminder that sometimes the most profound political critiques aren't delivered in a serious speech, but through a perfectly timed joke. Thanks so much for joining me for this explanator. I really hope this deep dive into the Thesmophoriazusae leaves you eager to go explore more of these brilliant ancient texts.